What's up? It's Darius. It's time for a solution. Okay, this is the to-do program from tutorial 4. Alright, so I added a few more items. Make programs and eat cereal. But what I really want you to see is this guy. Alright, so this was a little bit of a tricky one because you had to remember, first of all, that arrays start with the index of 0, but the length of an array is you don't subtract 1, or I mean the length of the array is like natural as we would think of it. So an item, a list with 3 items has a length of 3. All right, so in order to access the third item, we would write to do 2, which is 3 minus 1. You see that? It has 3 items, and then because a computer starts counting at 0 instead of 1, we have to subtract 1 to compensate for that, and then you can use todo.length. I also want you to notice that you can use JavaScript inside of the square brackets to calculate the index for the item you want to access. Alright, and then we end with some string interpolation. It says, don't forget to eat cereal. Woo! Alright, hey, before we move on to the next topic, which is objects, and they're super fun, but because of their added complexity, or just, it's going to be easier for us if I introduce another simple utility called console.log. Alright, and this performs a similar function as alert, and actually you use it exactly the same. So you put a message in here, or you can put a message in here. What's the difference? This makes a this guy here, alert makes a box. It pops up on the screen, and it's super visible. But console.log, oh, it does nothing. Well, not really. It shows up in the web console. All right, I'm using Firefox, and on Firefox you can inspect element to get here, or maybe it's in tools as well. Chrome, it'll be somewhere else. Probably it'll be an inspect element too, maybe. Microsoft Edge, I don't know. Okay, you might have to look that up. And don't worry about this huge red error. That's really nothing. Actually, all it is telling us that we did not declare A encoding. I could fix that, but it's not an actual error, despite the urgency-ness. By the way, it's hard to read. Let me expand this out a little bit. It says console. Alright. This is the JavaScript console, and pretty much every browser has one. But more importantly, what we see is that message is printed out here, and it tells us it came from index.html line 6. And this is really cool because now not only can we see our message, but we also see where it came from, and that is helpful for debugging. Our program was very small, but if you had a program that was 100 lines, 300 lines, and you were just having little alert boxes popping up, you know, all the time to see what the value of different things are, you would be very confused. Okay, so this is so much easier because it tells us a line number. Also, we're going to find that the console is capable of giving us more helpful and more detailed messages. So let's try something. Let's try something. You know what? I'm gonna go back to our to-do program, and I don't really care about the last item. Let's just alert to do. Okay, and then we'll also console.log to do. and we'll compare them. I said that they were the same. You saw that they worked about the same. First of all, so it does show us the 3 items separated by commas, alright? But whoa, look at all this. I mean, it's even like pink and blue. It tells us that it's an array, and it puts the square brackets in here just to make it fancy, and it shows that it's a string. Now, you'll also notice that it doesn't show up until we hit OK. That's because the alert function stops execution of the JavaScript and pauses everything until you hit the OK button. That's another reason why we don't like to use alert that often, especially for debugging. But I suppose you could throw it in there intentionally to pause the program. I mean, yeah, that's up to you. But from now on, I'm going to be using console.log because of the more detailed report that this gives back. I mean, look at all this, okay? I told you it's 0 indexed, right? So it starts with 0, 1, 2, and has a length of 3, and I mean, there's all sorts of stuff in here that it's quite overwhelming, actually, how deep you can go in this inspector. I mean, yeah, that's enough of that, right? Okay. Anyway, that is why I like console.log. Okay, we just did arrays. Next thing is called an object, alright? And it is a little bit similar to an array. That's why I did the array first. But instead of just saying object, let's make how about a user? Because we're on websites, and you know, websites have users. This time we're going to assign it equal to something inside of curly braces. Alright? We saw curly braces before with the if statement. We saw curly braces inside string interpolation. This time we're assigning a variable equal to curly braces. But I want you to think about them a little bit, how we use the array and the square brackets. Instead of having just a list of items separated by commas, we're going to have a list of pairs separated by commas. Pairs. No, not the fruit. I mean a group of 2 things, okay? And they're going... each item in the pair is separated by a colon. That guy, right? And it's a key value pair. And let me... well, you saw me do this with the list. Can I bring it back up? Well, no, I didn't. Okay. You saw me do it with the list. You can separate longer lists onto several lines. As long as they're happening between the brackets, you're fine. So, you know, we had like, you know, something there, something there. Well, alright. So it doesn't have to be all on one line. Try to keep your JavaScript lines relatively short. If it's starting to overflow way off the page, then you know you're going to have problems coming back and reading it. So yeah, I said key value pairs, and you know, let's go with the analogy of a dictionary. So you might have in a dictionary actually has key value pairs in it, because the key is the word that you want to look up, like a script maybe, and the value is a program that does things. Okay, that's a very specific definition we got there. And then we can put a comma, and we can put another key value. We can say that name is the thing that you call stuff. Okay. I know my creativity is mind-blowing. But you're starting to see a pattern here. So it's a little bit like a list, except we have a key. A key is also supposed to be unique. So just like in a dictionary, you wouldn't see the same word twice. Oh, I mean, you might see the same word twice if it has multiple definitions, but In JavaScript, the key is supposed to be unique. Also note that your values don't have to be strings. They could be numbers too. You could say count is 45 or something, and you could say enabled is true. Alright. You can use booleans, you can use numbers, any of that. Enabled. Oh, okay. Yeah, make sure you put a comma after everything. That might give you a headache. If you, well, again, I like Visual Studio Code. Well, so far, except for that weird curly brace error. But everything else about VS Code is really cool. If I forget a comma, it's basically like spell check except for programmers. Pretty cool, huh? Bam, so that's called an object. Oh, I called this user. Wow, I just remembered that I called that user. Maybe I should have made this well, I went with a dictionary analogy. Let's do something that makes sense, like name is Darius and email is Darius Montez at email.com. And all the other things like store your password in plain text. My password is password123. Okay, and we've just created all this whole thing. This is all that let statement. All right. Let x equal 3. All right, we've gone a long way from let x equal 3 to let x equal user with all this, all that stuff in there, okay? But that's all still a let statement. And by the time it gets to the end, bam, okay, now it just finished assigning to user. Phew, so what does this look like? Let's console.log it. Alright. Well, it says it's an object with name, Darius, email, and then the password. And expanding it just makes it more orderly. So that's cool. Well, what about, can we use an object in a similar manner that we used an array? So what about, user... instead of giving it an index, we'll give it a string, and the string is going to be one of the keys. Okay. And if all's well, we see that it will print out the value. Now, I've been calling these keys, but they are also called properties, and you can see that when I hover over VS Code is telling me that it's a property. Why is that? Well, now we finally get to talk a little bit about that dot separator, alright? And you can see VS Code is even helping me out a little bit at email, name, and password. So you see, there's more than one way to access the keys or the properties of an object. You can either use the index or the array-ish looking method, or you can use the dot separator to access a property of the object. Just to see that work. It looks the same, of course, and we should be able to do this for any of them. Nice. Now you might be wondering, why couldn't we use the dot separator to access the items of an array? Well, remember that in an array, if we just made an array, I need to assign something, okay. In array, the indices are all integers, and so the equivalent of that would be a.0, except that's just strange. It looks strange and it's not valid JavaScript. So we can't use a dot separator to access numerical like indices. Now you also may be thinking, there seems to be quite a striking similarity between an array and an object. I mean, an array doesn't have keys, but it sort of does, because it has the indices, that are, 0, 1, 2. It turns out that if you were to create a dictionary, now I'm getting into some, okay. Well, I won't go there yet. Let's just see these two. Here's A and A2. We're gonna compare them. That is a little bit difficult to tell apart. If it didn't say array and object, you would have no idea that they were different. Even expanding them, they look the same, except that the array has a length to it. But other than that, they look so similar, and that's because arrays actually are objects. In fact, they've just been objects that have been extended with some additional features. Alright? And that's why they're so similar, because the implementation of an array is based off of an object. So, keep that in mind. Arrays are objects. That'll come back sometime. And it might even cause a little bit of trouble, but whenever you're trying to compare, you're trying to check to see if something is an array or if it is an object. Well, they're so similar, might mistake them. So, well, let me get my user back. We'll do some other things with objects. At this point, you shouldn't be shocked to see some of these same syntax idioms coming around. Instead of Darius, we can go John Doe, so we can assign. We can also delete things out. So guess what? If we console.log user.name, it's going to be undefined, just like in the array. Now there's not a push function for objects, because that doesn't make any sense like it does for an array. But you can still add key value pairs or properties to an object after it's been created. And it's quite simple. Again, there's two ways to do it. Instead of doing name, let's do something that just isn't in there yet. Okay, and that works perfectly fine. And I'll console.log the entire user object just to see that now we have an age showing up in there. Or same result. There is a good reason for having two ways to do the same thing. Sometimes I don't like having two ways to do the same thing, but there is a good reason. And let's say that you wanted to, instead of put a string directly in there, you could store it in a variable and say let key equal age. And now we can put not in quotes, but just key, and this will refer to this. And when this gets interpreted, of course, it'll put a key. It'll add a key with a value of 35. And instead of a variable set to something in the program, you know, this might be user input that someone typed in, or you might get this from another external source, you know. But it's not possible to do the same thing using the dot separator and assigning an age. You can't say user dot. Well, you just, it's already unquoted, you know. If I said user.key is equal to 35, it's not referring to this guy. Okay, in this syntax, it's going to actually create a key called key. Let me show you that. Alright, it's called key. It is not it's not going to refer back to this guy like it does whenever you use square brackets. And that is because when you use the dot separator for anything, whether it be something that already exists on the object, like name, or something that's new, like age, whenever you do this, JavaScript is going to search the user object one row at a time, looking for a key that has that has whatever you typed here. Okay, and so when I do this, it's going to search for age, no, age, no, age, no. Okay, well, I'll just add it, and I'll add one called age. That's why you can't put, have a variable using the dot separator like that. There's plenty more to objects, and probably about half of all JavaScript language stuff revolves around objects, maybe more. It's a super critical piece that has a lot of functionality wrapped up into it, a lot more functions, but we will learn these things gradually. This video is getting to be long enough. It's time for another challenge. In this challenge, I want you to create a conversion table from inches to something. So inches to, oh, I did it again. I will learn this. And I want you to define the let's see, key value pairs of units to the conversion factor that you would need to multiply something to get it from inches to that other conversion factor. So for example, inches to centimeter, you would multiply by 2.54, and inches to feet you would divide by 12. And how about also do what's miles, inches to miles. That it doesn't sound very practical, but we'll do it. All right. And then I want the program to, I want you to have a variable unit. You should have a variable called unit that will be a string that will like centimeters, for example, and then it should console.log the conversion factor to going from inches to whatever unit the variable unit is set to. Alright, so this does actually have some practical example, and we will see what you guys come up with. The solution, of course, will be ready in the next video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.